I love it when companies take a look at their products and say, we can do better, especially when those products are the less than glamorous components you'll probably not see on a race bike. Shimano has a ton of drivetrains for fitness bikes, entry-level mountain bikes, hybrid bikes that mean a whole lot to the Shimano's business and to the people who use them. And as Shimano took a step back and saw the mix of speeds, cable pull ratios, and incompatibility, it decided it could do better. Enter its new component line called CUES.
CUES stands for Create Unique Experiences, but it is not the acronym that matters here. It is the paring down that matters. Shimano is moving aside groups like Alivo, Acera, Altus, and more, and putting that tier under one name. Like Hadi said, the idea is to create a certain amount of uniformity at this level. To do that, Shimano is taking this one chain for all speeds, 9, 10, or 11, and putting that in the CUES line. There is also one derailleur that is compatible with all 3 speed options.
One area where there's no option, or there are more options, I should say, and that is cranksets. The CUES line has 1x and 2x cranks. CUES also has a more robust cassette and chain rings or chains, and the teeth it comes in contact with should last longer.
Yep, sturdy stuff. We know this is a show about a race where you might want to run XT or XTR, but all of us have either a commuter bike or know someone who has a bike that is never going to see a start line. And that's why we want you to be aware of the new CUES components. To check out this line from Shimano, go to bike.shimano.com.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. Find them at bike.shimano.com. This is Season 6, Episode 6 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and in this episode, we are going to take a new look at this race, and we're going to look at it through the eyes of 2 of the youngest racers at last year's Leadville 100. In addition to being young, they are also brothers. And let me put in, they are fast. So yes, we have a very interesting look back at last year's race.
A little postscript to our interview with Ryan Cross of Lifetime, the last show we did, and that has to do with the no aero bar rule that the race series is implementing this year. There was a lot of back and forth in that section of our show, and what got lost in the final was whether or not that new rule would be applied at other mountain bike races in Leadville, specifically the stage race. Ryan told us that indeed the aero bar rule will be applied at the stage race, so be advised.
Yep, and that's going to be across the board at all of the Leadville series races. That aero bar rule is a toughie. Chances are, if you are behind the first couple of corrals, you can do whatever you want. We're not the ones who set the rules or enforce them, so we can say that. But the start line is congested, let's face it. And most officials are not even going to notice. But remember, everyone comes across, we all cross the starting line together, but we come across the finish line solo. And that's when that extra handlebar equipment could stand out like a sore thumb.
All right, let's talk bottle cages now. And they are legal at the Leadville Trail 100. But yeah, they're kind of boring, right? Who cares? Bottle cages. Of course, we all care if our cages lose their grips on our precious water bottles as you are bouncing down Sugarloaf and you still have more than an hour of riding to go. That would be a problem. Or if someone else's bottle breaks loose on the Columbine descent and that bottle ends up under your front wheel. Problem. So yeah, bottle cages matter. Envy knows this too, and that's why they have introduced the grippier, stronger CIM cage.
Anyone who has ever ridden a tri-bike knows how much a good bottle cage can matter. I don't know, Hadi, if you have ever ridden a triathlon, but anytime you get to a cattle, one of those cattle guards, there are dozens of bottles just scattered all over the road. That bottle cages don't hold on. As you can tell, I am not bored by bottle cage talk. I'm in fact obsessed with bottle cages because it is not easy to find one that actually does the job. You know, I count folks every year with flats coming down the power line. And I do that because there is no way I could actually keep up with that count if I counted ejected bottles. The same goes with a goat trail on Columbine and the Sugarloaf descents. Look, you just don't want to lose a bottle during this race. And that's why Envy has created the CIM. It stands for Carbon Injected Molded. Envy was out to build a cage that met the demands of gravel and mountain bike racers like us, and we demand cages that hold on to our bottles.
The CIM is top loading. The wings of that cage wrap nearly all the way around the bottle. The contact surfaces are smooth and flat for a better grip. Envy has had bottle cages all along. Most notably, its 19-gram carbon cage at $70 each. The CIM, that is, weighs a little more, costs half as much, but does twice the job at holding on to that precious hydration. And that really is the point here. To check out the CIM cage and all the great Envy carbon wheels and components, go to Envy. That's ENVE.com.
CJ and Jaxon Wickens are on this episode of the show. First-time Leadvillers, two young guns who taught Hottie and me a lot. We think you're going to learn something too. CJ, Jaxon, welcome to the show. I am 100% certain that both of you are the two youngest people we have ever had on the Leadville podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited. It's an honor to be the youngest, I guess.
Yeah.
So, in particular, Jaxon, you were 18 years old in how many months when you raced it last year?
I was 18 years old, and I guess that would be 8 months. So it was crazy.
So there's probably someone who is younger who has done the race than you.
Yeah, there could be.
It is possible. We have not researched it and probably won't. But the two of you weren't just young, but really fast. And we'll get into your times in a minute. But for the audience, that we all care about being fast. We all care about having fun. And a lot of us have kids that we want to drag into mountain biking. Obviously, your parents did something right. So what got you into cycling in the first place?
What got me into biking in the first place would probably be my older brother. So he raced in the Utah High School Mountain Bike League. And at first, I definitely hated it. It was not what I liked. It was hot, it was brutal, and it just was not very fun. And then I played baseball, just like little league teams for like the high school and stuff. And then I didn't love like the coach aspect. And I loved biking because it was like an individual sport. You got whatever you put in, like is what you got out. So I gave it a shot, 8th grade. And I just fell in love. I got a lighter bike and then I just started training.
A lighter bike. That's always the answer,
Yeah.
man. So it was CJ who got you into riding?
So it's my oldest brother.
Your oldest brother. So
yeah.
so you all come from a family of
Yeah.
racers.
We do.
So has he done Leadville too?
He's doing it this year. We got him to do it this year. So we're all 3 in for 2023.
Oh my gosh. How about you, CJ? What brought you into this?
Yeah, so honestly, I was always kind of rode like mountain bikes growing up, but soccer was my main thing. I played soccer through high school. I went and played 2 years of college soccer, and biking was always there, but not my main focus. So when COVID hit, honestly, I'm going to contribute this to Jaxon. He's like, dude, let's go biking. And he got me on a lighter bike. And I honestly fell in love with it. I've always been the endurance type and love to like suffer a little bit, I guess. And so I fell in love with it. I got really excited about it. And the best thing for me is me and Jaxon were able to bond on the bike together and push each other to our limits, which we had never gotten to do in a competitive aspect before. So yeah, I guess I've fallen in love with biking more in my later years, and it's totally just taken off.
You're 21 years old. You don't have later years.
Later years should be qualified, Fatty, and that CJ, when he raced Leadville, legally could not have a drink when he raced Leadville in 2022. So later years should be put in quotation marks real quick. But for the both of you, real quick, I mean, what's the as two guys who are, CJ is a guy who is, not yet able to drink, but was trying to get involved in the sport. How is it right now for getting involved in the sport? Are there organizations? Are you finding the NICA stuff? Is there anything happening that helps you folks get in?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a little different since I started after the NICA stuff. So I had a little bit of a different path getting into it. But the community is great, and it's so welcoming. Often you can, in some sports, it can be scary just hopping into something, especially when you don't know much. So I was able to kind of find, well, with Jaxon's help, he kind of got me into the community a little bit. And from there, I really never had anyone that was keeping me not excited about the sport. Everyone kind of just kept the stoke alive. And it was the people in cycling that actually made it so easy to just fall in love with it.
And you've got three brothers at the starting line this year. So is he going to be in the white corral and you two are going to be in, well, I won't spoil it by saying what corral you two are going to be in quite yet, but is he going to be way off the back with you guys, starting, 10, 15 minutes ahead of him?
Yeah, as of right now, that's how it's going to go. I know he does want to go to a qualifier to see if he can bump it up a little bit, though.
Very nice. And so are the three of you all pretty well matched?
Me and CJ are definitely like neck and neck. And then my oldest brother that is also going, he took a break off of biking for a few years for work. And then he moved back home from Logan and he started riding with us, and he's definitely climbing the ladder and he's getting faster. So it'll be super cool to see.
How cool would it be to have three brothers cross a finish line together? That's all I can say. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to ask you, I mean, it's not like you can just race the Leadville 100. First, you got to get in. And the fact is, both of you did get in last year. So how did you do that?
I would say the way we got in is, so we didn't get in on the lottery, which was we were disappointed, and we really wanted to get in, and we saw the Silver Rush 50. And that was like, hey, if we don't get in, at least we get to go to Leadville and see what it's like. So we made a trip out of it, and that's really how we got in. We did the Silver Rush 50.
So did you win the Silver Rush 50? Or, did you qualify in, or did you get in through the raffle that they do afterward?
So I was lucky enough in my age group, the under 19, I was able to win that category, which was awesome. I got that token, didn't have to worry about the lottery after. And then the only thing was the podiums were before, and then it was just hoping that CJ could get in on that lottery.
Yeah, so it was scary. I mean, we went to Silver Rush with intentions to qualify. Like, that was our intentions. We were there to perform. Like, that was our race for the year. Because without qualifying, there's no Leadville. So that was our A race. So we did really well there. I think overall, I was 17th and Jaxon was 18th. So how that worked out, Jaxon got first in the under 19 category, which got him a token. But with the 19 to 29 category having so many fast athletes, I was like 12th or 13th or something like that in my category. So when Jaxon got in, I was biting my fingernails sitting there waiting to get in. And luckily we both got in and left Silver Rush with an entry to Leadville that year.
Yeah, CJ, you're in a hell of a category, man. I mean, you're diving right into the deep end with some big fish there. I mean, probably most of the Lifetime Grand Prix racers are in that category, so it's quite a place to be. So you guys obviously could have deferred, CJ. And the Silver Rush is right on top of Leadville. Not a lot of time there. Why did you guys decide to pull the trigger and go for it?
So when we didn't get in January, I think we just were like, we're doing it. And before we even entered for it, we kind of thought it was like a 2 to 3 year thing. We knew we wanted to go to Leadville, but we thought it was going to be a process. But at the end of the day, we're like, we're going to do whatever we can to get in. And if we get in, we're going. So when we got in, we were like, yeah, it's a month out, but we felt like we were pretty well trained at that point. We lived together all summer, and we'd go work part-time, get home, and then go ride for 2 to 3 hours every single day together. So at that point, we got in and we had 4 weeks. So 2 of those were training weeks, I'd say. We came back and we're like, we got to log some miles. We are not ready. So we just kind of put the hammer down and would just ride away and just we ate a lot, trained our bellies a little bit more, because we all know the nutrition's probably the most important aspect of things. But from the very beginning, we knew we wanted to go for it.
I mean, you started your first year knowing something that it took like 15 years for me to figure out, that how you eat during the race is as important a component as anything else. How did you know all this so fast, and what was your nutrition strategy?
So, how we probably knew about it is definitely, I'll give this one to CJ. He is like the numbers nerd. He always looks into that. And I actually really struggle with eating on the bike. I am not good at it. Like, I'll race iCups, local series around here, that are 2-hour races, and I'll have a bottle of Carbo Rocket before, and I don't eat anything during the race. I can't eat or I'll throw up. So when we got in that month, I was stressing, and I was like, okay, I got to learn how to eat gels, and I can drink Carbo Rocket. So that was like my main thing, is just drink as much as I could for my calories. So my plan was a bottle of Carbo Rocket an hour and then a gel an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my
do you have it mixed as the 330 or?
So I was actually doing 2 scoops.
Okay, so 220 calories in a bottle and then a gel. So you were getting 300 plus calories an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, some of our listeners won't necessarily know, but one of the most popular nutrition drinks in the Utah area is Carbo Rocket. A good friend of mine, Brad Keys, founded this sports nutrition company, and it is crazy popular here in Utah. So I know what Carbo Rocket is, but I wanted some of our listeners to know. So you actually did get to the point where you could nurse along 300 plus calories every hour. That is a key learning for everyone who does this race.
Yeah, mine is similar. Like Jaxon said, I am a little bit of a numbers nerd, so I'd always be telling Jaxon, like, dude, we got to train our bellies to take in that, because we all know you can't just show up on race day and say, I'm going to take 300 calories an hour. That just won't work. So I always try to eat, and I'd say about May, I could only take in probably like 70 grams of carbs an hour. My stomach wouldn't do well if I went above that. And over the summer, I just really focused on getting in a little bit more on my training rides, and just kind of spend a little bit more money and make sure I'm fueling myself properly. So about Leadville time, I probably was taking in 85 to 90 grams of carbs an hour, which just was perfect for me. One thing I sweat really salty, so I do have to take in quite a bit of sodium, as well as I did drink a lot of water during Leadville too, which was, honestly, my nutrition was perfect. So I started out, I'd say half my bottles were water and half of them were Carbo Rocket as well. And then I supplemented the rest with gels. So I think I had about 8 gels, 4 bottles of Carbo Rocket, 3 waters. And then every hour I was taking in sports legs.
Gotcha. What was your calorie intake target per hour during Leadville, CJ?
So Grant, I know my carbohydrates. I just do it off that. So it was 85 grams an hour.
I'll do the math later. I forget what that works out to, but that's good. That's a good number. Yeah.
We got nothing we can teach these guys. You guys are already doing everything right, and you are in your teens or early 20s. This is amazing. So tell us about your race day.
So race day, it was, I was feeling great. I had a big breakfast. I had pancakes and just tons of carbs, as much as I could. Mm-hmm. And then we got to the corrals, I want to say about 30 minutes, like 45 minutes before we were in the Red Corral. So it wasn't too busy. We were surprised. We always heard the stories of like, you need to get there early. And we didn't get there super early, and there was like plenty of spots.
The waves have changed things. It used to be so hard to get a good spot, but with the corral divisions and the wave starts, getting in isn't the difficulty that it used to be. So anyway, I'm going to let you keep going.
All right. So then when the gun went off, my goal was just stick on CJ's wheel. Like, don't let him go, because I'm a good climber, but I'm not super good on the downhills and the flats. I'm super light. So on the downhills, I'm pedaling, and all the older guys are just flying by me, and I'm just grinding as hard as I can. So I had him until, what was it? Right before power line. And I just had to pee so bad. So by the time I got down power line, I'd peed 4 times.
My gosh.
Drank way too much. I was like, everyone told me I needed to have a bottle of Carbo Rocket down before the first hour. And I did that. But then I had 2 bottles down, and I was destroyed. So once I got to the flats, he was gone. I was all by myself. And then I finally found tandems, which I've heard is like legendary if you find a tandem.
It's the draft
golden
to get.
secret.
Yeah.
So I was with a tandem group all the way to Twin Lakes Dam. And then once we hit Columbine,
I'm gonna stop you there, because I want to get CJ's part of the story as well before we get to the Columbine climb.
Yeah. So one thing Jaxon does have on me is he can eat in the morning. Man, that I get nervous, my stomach locks up, and I'm just forcing down pancakes. So I did luckily get some stuff down as much as I could. Like you said, got there early in the morning and got in our corral. We got in the front of the Red Corral, which was nice because that gold and silver, they go off and you're basically like in the front of the race if you're in the Red Corral. One thing that was kind of funny is I threw my jacket over to my family, and right before they're starting to count down, I realized my gloves were my jacket. So they're like 10, 9, and my girlfriend throws them to me, and I luckily catch them in both hands, throw them on as they say 1, and go. Got my heart rate going before I even left the start line.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so that was craziness. After that, I really just focused on not going too hard. I wanted to get in the front as we got to Carter, but not overdo it. So me and Jaxon kind of just stayed together, went up and over that first climb, down the pavement behind Turquoise Lake there. And then as we approached Sugarloaf, that's when Jackson's like, dude, I got to pee. So I'm like, well, I guess this is it, man. And he dropped off, and that was the last I saw him there.
There goes the brotherly love. When the bladder gets full.
There it goes. I ain't waiting.
Sorry, Jaxon.
Yeah, there's no waiting at that point. But then I went up and over there, descended really well on power line, and then I caught myself alone on the flats going to Pipeline. And I was kind of in between 2 groups, which was a little awkward. So instead of pushing it alone, I actually just started eating and spinning a little bit softly until the group behind me caught me. And then I hopped in the train there and then just kept pulling with them.
Man, you guys are just full of good key learnings. That is the strategy. So many racers blow themselves up on the way to Pipeline. No, you eat, you recover, and then you grab a group behind you. Smart move.
Absolutely. No, yeah, it was hard. It's hard to do, like, because I felt good at the time, but I knew just from like everyone's experiences to just kind of wait it out, eat up, and then catch a group behind me instead of trying to bridge to another one.
So CJ, I did the math here for you. Your target was about 340 calories an hour, which is great. That's a great target to have for somebody like you racing. Geez, both you ate pancakes. Pancakes are the new oatmeal, I think. I mean, people are eating pancakes everywhere. But what I want to ask you is, was it your intention to stay with each other for the whole rate going in? Did you think we could do this thing together? What was the idea going in?
I think at least my intention was to stay together as long as we're not holding each other back. But we went into it knowing that if we're together on the flats, then we can help each other out, especially if we're alone. So we really wanted to stay together as much as we could. But with that said, we weren't going to hold each other back at the end of the day.
Yeah, our main objective was really, it's easier to ride your pace. So don't try to go slower for anyone and don't go faster. Just go your pace and be comfortable, and we'll see each other at the end of the race.
Hadi, you and I have talked before about someday doing an episode on how to do this race together. And I've tried racing it with someone. I know you've tried racing it with someone where you're like, we stay together no matter what. And it is just hard to do. I mean, because everyone feels bad at some point during the race. But when you feel bad, that varies from person to person. And if you stay together no matter what, then you're going to be at your combined worst, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go to the Columbine climb, the part of the race that, everybody dreams and has nightmares about. How did that go for the two of you?
Columbine, I actually felt great. Like, it was probably my highlight of the race. I was like, big climb. This is what I do best.
Well, you're light. You mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. You're strong. So, I mean, yeah, it seems like it would be a good fit. Had you been up Columbine before?
No, it was my first time even seeing it. And I was like, I'm just going to go my pace and we'll see what happens.
How about you, CJ? How are you feeling?
Yeah, honestly, that's where I kind of felt. I didn't feel terrible, but I knew I had the potential to feel terrible real fast. So because coming out of that, like the feed zone, like the alternate, I kind of just toned it back a little bit because I could tell I was a little behind on my eating maybe and just needed to tone it back. I did it pretty easy up till the goat trail, just kind of spun I found a guy, we just chatted it up. And spun up to the goat trail. I mean, still pushing it, but nothing crazy. And then right when I got to the goat trail, I kind of made a move around a big group because I knew I wanted to go into it ahead of everyone. I didn't want to get stuck behind someone that would make me fall over. And so once I got up there, I got really lucky where I got a perfect break in the riders coming down, and I actually didn't have to get off my bike at all. I kind of just sat on my back wheel and just kind of pushed it out. And I can actually attribute that to the Silver Rush 50. Knowing how to climb a steep trail like that is something you do in the Silver Rush 50, and it played to my benefit on the top of Columbine.
That, in 25 times of doing the Leadville 100, I have cleaned the power line. I have never cleaned Columbine. So hats off to you on that. Amazing.
Well, thank you. I think I got a little bit lucky with the gap there.
Maybe lucky, but also maybe really, it sounds like you played a really good strategy game. So how did the goat trail go for you, Jaxon?
It didn't go like CJ. CJ had a little bit better story than me. So I saw CJ, right as you come off that road, there's this super steep climb right before that goat trail. Mm-hmm. And I could see CJ, he was climbing it. And I was like, oh, if he can climb it, I can climb it. Like, I'm definitely doing that. And I got right up there and I went to go around this person and someone just came flying down. And I was like, this is not smart. I'm not going to ruin my race and that other person's race. So I was like, I'm just going to get off. Like you guys say, you got to walk with purpose. Mm-hmm. So I just hurried and just grinded up the uphill, pushing it as fast as I could. And then when I had a clear break, I just hopped back on that bike and started riding again.
Very smart play.
Now, both of you are far enough front. You're seeing the front of the race, right? I mean, you're seeing it well up Columbine, in fact, correct? You saw some of those leaders coming down?
Yeah, it was actually really cool. About halfway up Columbine, I see the lead moto come by, and I'm like, it's only a matter of time before the leaders come by. And I'm like, surely it's going to be a big group of them. And out of nowhere, Keegan comes around the corner, one-footed, unclipped, all alone. And everyone's clapping and cheering. And I was just like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. You could hear it like a wave coming down Columbine of just like the roar of people cheering Keegan on while he came down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a sort of point of reference, at the time, I mean, you saw Keegan pretty much toward the top of Columbine. I was at the base of Columbine when he came down, but that wave of sound, everyone cheering on this phenomenal human being, doing the race of a lifetime. Yeah, we were all, he got cheered for, 40 miles, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. But you guys were having a day of your own. So, CJ, you're at the top of Columbine. What was your turnaround time? Do you remember?
I'm honestly off the top of my head, I don't know. I want to say it was probably about 4:30. Because in my head, I was a little bit, maybe more close to 4:20. Because in my head, I was thinking, I'm got to turn it on if I want to get home under 9. I really got to be smart and I don't want to blow up. So I turned around and I started just feeling really good after that. I dumped a bottle of water on my head at the top. And then I saw Jaxon near the top and I was like, oh boy, he's pretty close. I don't want him to catch me. I'm always scared when Jackson's behind me because he's just a workhorse. And I know that I just keep looking back and I feel like he's going to pop out of the woods just charging. So yeah, after that, I turned around about 4:20 and then just descended down. And by the bottom, I felt pretty good.
And how about you, Jaxon?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was only probably behind CJ close to 4 minutes. So it felt
that close.
Yeah. I caught him pretty good on Columbine on that climb. And I was like, oh, I'm close. I got this. But then 4 minutes is a lot longer than you think on Columbine. It seems close in miles, but how steep it is, you don't move very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did that turnaround, I was like, okay, went pee again at the very top because I was dying. And then I just started turning around and I was freezing. I was super cold. And I was like, hopefully I didn't go too hard on that climb because I laid it all out there. Well,
Jaxon, what's your intent at this point? Now your brother's up ahead of you and he's already stated that I'm trying to stay ahead of Jaxon at this point. It's probably a good goal for him too. If I can keep this gap, it probably means I'm going to have a successful day. How about you? Was it your intent? Did you think, if I close that gap, he and I could help each other? What was your motivation at that point?
My motivation was really catching him on the downhill. I sometimes do better than CJ on the downhill. Just I've raced a little bit more and I have a different strategy than him. So I was like, if I can catch him on the downhill of Columbine, I can hold him on the flats. But that was my main goal was just try to catch him on that downhill. Because I was like, 4 minutes, I can't bridge it on the uphills, but on the downhill, I think I could do it. But I just never saw him.
I love the way you two are motivating each other. And there's definitely a greyhound and rabbit kind of thing going on, right? That is fantastic.
No, absolutely. And by different strategy, Jaxon means he blows through everything and doesn't go around any rocks. I'm more of a play it safe type guy. And he's like, I'm just going to motor through everything in front of me.
If the fork goes out, it's my time. But they built it to go through the rocks. So I just throw that tire.
Okay, CJ and Jaxon are about to take us through their feed zone strategy, which means it's a good time to hear from our friends at the feed. And we want to focus this time on one area in particular, and that is the section between the bottom of Powerline and Twin Lakes. Racing-wise, it doesn't look like much on paper, but fueling-wise, it is pivotal. Hopefully, by the time you have reached Pipeline outbound, you have finished or almost finished whatever you had planned on eating and drinking over those first 2 hours of the race.
Hopefully. And if you have placed a crew at Pipeline, you could have them hand up a fresh bottle of energy drink, something like Morton 320, which is available from our friends at the feed. Or you might want to grab a bottle of Morton 160 and a gel, whatever amounts to between an hour and 90 minutes of fueling, because that's about what it takes to get from Pipeline to Twin Lakes.
We're not saying you have to go with Martin, but we are saying go to the feed, look over the stuff you know you like, then find the one or two things that will give you somewhere around 300 calories.
Yeah, this is, like you say, such while short, important segment where you are looking to do a couple of things. Keep up with your fueling strategy and keep moving. So a quick hand up or a quick stop for some Mortons or other on-the-go fuel is just a good, solid idea. Get rid of your morning bottles and take on a light load to Twin Lakes.
For more help on your fueling strategies, head to the feed. And again, they are extending a nice discount to our listeners. Claim your $80 annual credit at thefeed.com/Leadville. Register your email and verify your phone number, then spend your first feed credit of $20 right away.
Okay, back with CJ and Jaxon, our first-time brothers who took a pro approach to the feed zones.
We have glazed over my favorite part of the Leadville Trail 100, and that is operating a feed zone. Where did you guys have your feeds set up?
Yeah, so we just did the traditional pipeline, and then right out of our main feed was right outside of the Twin Lakes Dam before, you know where that single track kind of goes in? It was right there. So outside of all the people, and we were able to find our crew and nail them down there, which was nice because looking back, it was nice how close me and Jaxon were. So our crew didn't have to split up, and they were able to feed us both and then hop to the next spot.
So you had one crew covering both zones then, correct?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
Did you take feeds pipeline outbound in the morning? You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We took feeds 4 times.
Nice. So your crew was able to go get the pipeline outbound and then hopscotch and make it to Twin Lakes and feed you there and then turn around and backtrack?
Yeah, and we had 2 cars because we had my girlfriend and her dad, and then my parents were also there.
Yeah. Well, Fatty, we hear a lot of hand-wringing every year about feeding and, we can't do this. And we get the newbies will show up on the participants page or our Slack channel wondering how they're going to get their feeds done and worried that their crew's not going to be. But, here's another, more evidence that it is possible if you plan it out and you're not trying to cover. The good thing about CJ and Jaxon here is they're tightly spaced, right? So a crew can service them at both zones, one crew, both zones, and pull it off successfully.
Yeah, I want to point out that, for one thing, it was pipeline and then Twin Lakes alternate. I don't know how many people would be able to make it from pipeline to Twin Lakes and back in time. The distance between those two might make it difficult. Also, Jaxon and CJ were they were much further up front than a lot of our listeners, which means there was less traffic for them. So, I'm not trying to freak anyone out about their travel and so forth, but know where you're going to and where you're coming from. And, be aware of the volume of other traffic that is going to be around, because that can slow you down if you are in sort of the meat of the Leadville sandwich, right? If you were in the 9.5 to 10.5 hour zone where a big chunk of the racers are, meaning a lot of cars.
Totally. Just on that note, it was nice having my girlfriend's dad had fed before, so he kind of knew where to go. But it was surprising. I thought more people were going to be at the feed zones. But like you said, we were actually near the front. So there wasn't a huge congestion, especially going pipeline out or inbound, I should say, pipeline inbound. There really wasn't many people. I honestly was expecting more there, and I was expecting more on Powerline. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a party, but when I got there, it was like, it really was kind of dead, not going to lie.
Yeah, the one guy just pushing people up. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, since you're talking about it, let's get to the Powerline climb. You get to Powerline. It is, it is what I always say on this podcast is what the whole race is about, right? Everything else is just softening you up for the Powerline climb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Powerline climb was a different beast. Like, you're so happy to see it, but so sad at the same time. So when my strategy was climb it for sure. I was like, I'll feel great. I'll be able to climb it. I have a 12th gear. I'll be fine. And I made it up that first switchback, and I saw the super long straightaway, and I was like, nope, this is it. So I got off, and I was like, I'll just walk super easy. But my calves were killing me. They felt like they were just going to snap in half.
So you were cramping?
I've never cramped before. It was just super tight. And it just felt like there was no room for them to stretch anymore. So I ended up sidestepping, and I sidestepped the whole,
like you were on skis going up a mountain?
I was like sidestepping as fast as I could because I was like, CJ's making time on me because I was like, he probably climbed this. So I sidestepped until it gets to a super flat spot, and then I took off.
And were you making time on him, CJ?
That's right. I got to I left Pipeline and just I found a good group. I found a good group all the way back. Honestly, there was a roadie that I don't know who he was, but man, he just sat up front and pulled us to victory. I got really lucky. So he pulled me there. And like Jaxon said, you see it, you don't want to see it, but at the same time you do, because you know you're at the crux of the race, some may say. But yeah, I kind of sat in. For those gearheads wondering, I was running a 32 up front with a 50 in the back, 3250. And I'm about 40, I'm like 4.6, 4.7 watts per kilogram.
Wow. So, strong.
Just to take that into account. But so I was able to climb it. My bottom gear, I mean, I could have used the 3252, but hey, it got me up the mountain. I just sat in, just kind of turned the pedals, nothing too crazy. My cadence is super slow. But there's a few people falling off ahead of me, and I just saw how bad that was hurting them. So I was like, well, this hurts, but it might hurt less than walking. So I kept on going, and I got up it luckily.
Congratulations. I keep making this about me, but in all of the years I've done it, one time have I been able to successfully ride Powerline. And I mean, that's one of my proudest moments of this race. So, I mean, that you did it on your first go, incredible.
One thing with Powerline, I'm not sure if a lot of the listeners have watched the Education First video with Lachlan Morton and Alex Howes, or if you've watched any professional racing, they don't say anything about the next climb after Powerline. That was my number one thing. I was like, I don't know what happens after Powerline, but people say after Powerline, you're set. Like, you've made it. And
so you don't listen to this podcast. We talk about it mile by mile, man.
Yeah, you don't listen to Heidi whine and moan and groan about the Turquoise Lake pavement climb, I guess.
Yeah, that's the funniest. Me and Jaxon are always like, we talked about that, and it's like, no one talks about how hard that climb is to get back up to Carter.
We do.
Yep, agreed.
And we have listened to that podcast after the fact, actually.
So now you know.
It's right there in MP3, that's for sure. And my moaning and groaning about getting up to that Carter aid station every time. I go backwards there, I swear to God. So, yeah, you're right, though. I mean, it deserves... It definitely, if somebody is trying to strategize that race, trying to map things out, where their efforts are, that cannot be overlooked, especially where it comes. You know, when they look at the Tour de France climbs and they start categorizing climbs, you can look at a climb and on paper, if you just do it alone, it's like a Cat 1. But you put it at the end of a race after you've already done 3 Cat 1s, and it's suddenly an HC climb, right? It's suddenly beyond category. It's where the climb happens. And for that thing, it doesn't look like much on paper. It's paved. It's not that long, right? It seems like you should be able to just roll it, but it's where it is. And that's why it thrashes you.
I mean, you two both, I mean, you're both more or less local to where I do my rides as well. And so probably you do the same or had something in your head the same as I do. I'm like, it's just climbing the north side of Suncrest. That's all it is. It's just the same as that's all it is. And you know what? That's true. The numbers and the altitude are the same. And you know what? It feels like it is twice as steep and 4 times as long. It's just so hard, so hard.
Yeah, when you're on that tarmac, you're like, where the heck is that dirt? I was like, it's like, I swear this road was not this long on the way out.
You both were doing fantastic. Let's go ahead and take us to as we get to the finish line. First of all, were you surprised by the Boulevard if you were surprised by the May Queen climb?
We pre-rode the Boulevard, okay. So we were a little bit more educated on that. But it felt a lot longer at the end of the race. And you have people and you can see them coming behind you. And it's like, I passed them forever ago, it feels like. And you're just like running as fast as you can. And I couldn't see CJ, so I was already like bugged. Mm-hmm. But I went as hard as I could. I knew we were close. And then right as I saw that football stadium lights, I was like, finally, we're finally here.
Jaxon, when was the last time you had seen CJ? Was it on Columbine or was it after that?
It was the turnaround on Columbine. That was the last time I saw him.
Oh, that was the last time? Okay. So it'd been a while. Okay.
Yeah, that was the last time I saw him. And I felt like I was working pretty hard. So I'm like, if he catches me, he's flying for sure. But yeah, I got to the top of that Carter aid station and I looked at my Wahoo head unit and I'm like, I might be able to go under 8. If I really crank it home, I might just be able to. And so I got back up and I flew down that descent. I saw a few people ahead of me and I was feeling really good actually. I got to that boulevard and I saw a few people and I'm like, guys, we're close. Like, let's go. But at that point, I think I was probably one of the only ones feeling excited about it. And I pushed really hard. I rode up to the finish with this girl and I pulled her up there and we worked together a little bit. But as I got to the boulevard, I sprinted it in and looked down and I was about 8:04, 8:05 mark right there.
What girl? That girl could have been a Lifetime Grand Prix participant or a pro, or because you're right up there. Do you remember what girl?
I'm not sure who it was, but I'm pretty sure she's in the pro category. I'm not sure if she was a Lifetime member or not.
Before we reveal your final times, what was your goal time for both you and Jaxon going in?
The goal for me was just go under 9. I wanted that big belt buckle so bad. It's what everybody wants.
Sure.
And I was just lost on time. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how close I was. And when I saw like the boulevard and I looked down, I was like, I made it way better than I thought.
No, for sure. That was my goal as well. Under 9. We both went into there with the same goal. We're like, we just want to get the big belt buckle. We just want to do it under 9. And that was a daunting goal for us, honestly. We were nervous about that. One thing that was scary is like, if you've never rode the course, as we hadn't, you don't know where you can go hard, where you shouldn't go hard, how it's going to feel around this turn. Like, the big moments, but what about the other 75 miles in between, that you don't know? So, yeah, it was a little bit scary not knowing exactly where to go and where not to, but luckily we made it in our goal time.
Well, I love that you did not take it for granted. That is so important. I from time to time you run into someone who says, "Oh yeah, I'm going for sub 8. I'm going for sub 7." Have you ever been on the course? No, I don't. But I know what my FTP is. I know what my watts per kilogram is. I can do it, and they don't know. Right? You don't know until you've been there. So tell us about the finish and your times.
The finish, it was crazy. It was the best feeling ever. It's like, it hurts so bad, but it feels so good. And when I came in and I looked down and it was 8:13 and 47 seconds. And I was like, this is the greatest feeling ever. And then it hit me right as I stepped off the bike. And I've never felt so sick in my entire life. It felt like all the oxygen was just like going to my head. I had like the worst headache and I didn't know what was happening. I had like one of those oxygen, like boost oxygen tanks, and I was just like sucking it back as hard as I could. I was like, what is happening to my body? I have a picture of me laying on the ground in the middle of everybody, just holding my head with an oxygen tank ahead in front of me. And it was amazing, but brutal. And just having that belt buckle just right as you finish was so cool.
You had given your all, right? I mean, it's you're flattened by it. I mean, that's a very picture of giving your all. That's an amazing finish. CJ, how about you?
Yeah, so I sprinted it up to the finish, looked down, and it was 8:04:59, I was stoked about it. Like, I know the 8 mark was right there, but honestly, I didn't care about that. I cared that I made it. I had a really good day. I was safe. I felt good. So I was just super happy to make it back, see everyone standing there, and go up that red carpet. I went through there, and the first thing, I honestly got a little bit emotional because it was a big goal for us. Like, at the beginning of the year, we didn't no, like it was a 2 to 3 year goal. And here we are 8 months later standing at the end. And I was like, we did it. Like it was really cool. And the first thing I thought about was like, I just turned around and I was just waiting for Jaxon to come in because like he's been my training partner like all year. And it makes me a little emotional to say, but it was really cool. It was a really cool moment for the both of us. And I just waited for him. I gave him a big hug when he came through the finish line. And it was a really cool moment between the two of us. And then I was feeling a little bit better than he was. And I was like, dude, what about this? What about that? And he's like, dude, I'm about to throw up, laying on the ground. But so I probably bugged him a little bit while he felt like crap. I mean, I felt pretty hammered too, but I wasn't laying down yet.
Oh, man. Yeah. And if you don't get emotional at that finish line, then, I mean, I honestly don't even understand it. I still get... I get goosebumps, I get sick, I laugh, I cry, and 2 decades of this, and still affects me the same way. So love that you guys felt the full Leadville experience, and you're coming back.
Yes, we're coming back for round 2.
So did you lottery in, or?
Yeah, we got lucky and got the lottery. So we did a group this time. So we did individual last year, and everyone says that group can be a little bit more lucky. So we're like, we'll try it. We have nothing to lose, right? So we entered, and on, January 10th or something, we got that email, and it was just the best feeling ever. We're like, oh, here we go again.
So CJ's the numbers guy, and I'm sure you've done some crunching. What's it going to take to get under 8 hours?
So that's the goal this year. I want to be between that 7:30 and 8 mark. I think the biggest thing for this next year is I'm going to put a little bit more focus on nutrition than I did last year. Because I mean, I did really well, but I want to see if I can just push my number a little bit higher to get in a little bit more carbs, stay a little bit more fueled throughout the day. And I think one of the biggest parts of it is just knowing what I'm doing this second time around. I was just, like I said earlier, a little bit nervous. I was going to blow up. So I mean, I'm obviously not going to go out and just hit my threshold all day because that's not realistic. But I do know now where I can push, where I should eat, where I should relax a little bit, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully, we can continue on and maybe make it under 8 next year.
Well, this time you will have known for 8 months instead of for 5 weeks that you're doing the race.
It feels a lot better knowing that we're in. I mean, that week after, we're like, yeah, should we go back? Should we not? And then we're like, we put in for the lottery again, and we're like, we're doing whatever it takes to go back. It's too good not to. And I know Jaxon's mentioned he wants to see if he can go be the youngest one to go 10 in a row. I don't know if he could. Is that who was 28 that has 10 belt buckles? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the youngest person is to have 10 belt buckles, but I would love to do it from 18 to 28 just to get that full 10 in 10 years, which would be amazing.
Dude, I did my first one at age 30. So you'd have 10, or you could have a dozen by the same age when I did my first.
Hey, that's the goal.
That would be amazing.
As long as I can get in every year and go to a qualifier or get in on the lottery, I'll show up and give it my all.
Love it.
So Jaxon, you had an amazing day too, but have you taken time to crunch and look for little spots where you can improve? And if so, where would those be?
I'm more of just like a go-by-feel rider. I'm not like CJ really. So my main thing is probably just not drinking as much water off the start. Save a few pee trips. That's got to save a little bit of time. And then I would stop and grab my bottles every single time. So I'm going to train on getting those on the bike and then fueling better. So I'm hoping to get at least 90 grams of carbs per hour.
You want to take hand-ups then, as opposed to stopping your bike, that you're saying? I was going to ask how you guys handled your feeds. I mean, both of you are fast enough where you taking a hand-up on the fly, in other words, grabbing bottles on the fly, is something I would imagine you either did or are thinking about doing. How about you, CJ? Are you stop and grab them or take them on the fly?
So the first feeds I took on the fly, and we were able to just do like have two people separate. So I grab one and then put it in, grab another, put it in, and sometimes had a third person to hand me my gels just so I didn't have a pocket full of gels or chews, I did stop at Twin Lakes going outbound, and that's where I took my pee break. I stopped there and I got my garbage out of my jersey and refueled, put everything back in, and then on the way back through, I didn't stop at Twin Lakes. So I only stopped that one time. So only touched the ground there.
Jaxon, you've got a couple of free minutes that you could gain, right? CJ, maybe you've got a free minute that you could gain just by doing hand-ups. And the rest, honestly, I think the rest is just by course knowledge. I tell people who are normal speed that just course knowledge is enough for a half hour on your second time versus first. At the speed that you guys are going, that's not true, but it's worth a few minutes for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
No, for sure. One big thing, I guess this could be a tip, is having cold bottles. That kind of changed the day dramatically. Like just having a cold bottle wherever you're at, it's a life changer for sure. Also, one thing I had my dad do is he would have the cutie, like the little tangerines, and he'd have them just ready for me to grab. And so a cold bite of an orange, wherever you're at on the course, going through Twin Lakes, it was just kind of perfect. That sweet, sour, little bit change of that sugar you've been getting in. It was a refreshing little bite.
Yeah, there's a lot of work being done right now, CJ, and discovery on thermoregulation. That's exactly what you're talking about, where athletes are using cold products during races, and you'll see this in the Tour de France, where riders are actually almost freezing their gels. I mean, you can't freeze them because they're gel, but you can get them very, very cold. So when they take them in, it's essentially cooling their core down. And by cooling their core, they're cooling their muscle groups, and they're able to keep the workload going longer, which is, I think, the strategy you employed there is a great one.
Guys, I've been doing this race forever, still learned a ton from you. You're doing amazing races here, and it's been a pleasure to hear your stories.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's amazing, and I wish anybody luck in that race. You got to be friends out there, and we're all having a hard day. So just feel free to always wave or just have a chat up Columbine. You never know who you're going to meet.
You're only going to meet fast people is what I'm thinking.
No, yeah. Oh. Seriously. Thank you guys so much for having us on. But as he said, yeah, follow us on social media. Mine's CJ Wiggins 7. And just kind of say what's up. Follow us. Jaxon, you can plug yours in too.
Mine is Jaxon.w.14. And then we also have a bike team that me and CJ have created, which is Bike Fix Off-Road, if you guys want to follow it.
Fantastic. I think this is the first time we've had guests promote their socials on this show. The next generation is here.
Hey, we want to be friends. We want to be friends with everyone. It's just a big old community, and we love just getting out there and sharing stories.
Great stories from CJ and Jaxon, and this year, a third brother from this fast crew is going to make his Leadville debut.
Hey, you know what? The Wiggins brothers might as well make it official and get their family team some matching kits.
Oh, they should.
I know, huh? And of course, we know where they can do that, and that is DNA Cycling. I mean, just think of the possibilities for logos on that jersey. Team Brothers in Arms, We Are Family, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. Okay, that one's a little off the mark, but yeah, you get the picture, right? Oh, and a picture. That's a good idea. I bet you that's something DNA could help with as well, getting images or renderings of each brother on the jerseys. Oh, Fatty, the possibilities here are endless.
They are, and you're going to explore every one of them. You've gone a little bit crazy with the family theme here, but, maybe they just want to be young guys and look cool, and DNA can help them with that. I sort of did that with my Fat Cyclist custom kits back in the day. They had sort of a Friends of Fatty theme, sort of family in nature, I guess you could say. But they were cool enough that you would wear it on all your rides. And the Wiggins brothers, I think, could do the same. And they could do it on their own. I mean, custom kits can sound like a scary, daunting affair, but it isn't with you when you go with DNA. They have streamlined the process of kit design. Jerseys, bibs, colorways are all right there on the DNA site.
Getting started is easy. Just head to dnacycling.com and choose the custom apparel option. And be sure to let them know you found out about DNA from the Leadville podcast.
What is a good strategy for staying ahead of the cutoff times?
What do the experts say about sleeping effectively at altitude? And what do you each do?
For Leadville, hardtail or full suspension?
Yeah, good question.
We are at the LFAQ segment of the show where Fatty and I answer your Leadville frequently asked questions.
Yep, and the one we're going to tackle this episode is relevant to the story that CJ and Jaxon just told. How do you ride the Leadville 100 with someone? Hottie, we have both done that before, and I think we both have some good advice on this. So let's start with you. What did you learn when racing the Leadville 100 with a friend?
I did it twice, both with the same partner, a man we affectionately call Papa. He really fits in on this podcast, right? Because he has a nickname. Greg's his real name, but the Papa we all call them. He was a teammate. He and I were lucky enough that we could train together too. So we really had spent a lot of time together, pacing. I understood how fast he was going. I was riding in support of him. The idea was I was going to pace him, attempting to get him a buckle, move him up. He was already a really good rider and had proved that riding solo around the Leadville Trail 100. So I had very little to kind of coach him with or teach him about the course itself. I was really just a mule out there for him, trying to keep him on pace for his goals. So we did it twice in back-to-back years. And I would say the one thing I really walked away with out of all that, because we had successful days. I mean, it worked out just fine. He was on the podium in his age category. But on one of the times, I think it was our first time, we had to ad-lib our way out of a situation. I started developing a flat going up Columbine. And so I told him, go ahead of me, leave me, I'll get to or actually he told me, scratch that, he told me to go ahead to the top of Columbine, fill my tire, and then hopefully we'd catch each other again when he came past. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. He actually was able to make the turnaround and get down the mountain before I could get my tire situation fixed. But I later caught him on the power line climb, which was fine. It all worked out in the end. The point I'm trying to make here is be ready for that ad lib and know what you're going to do if one of the riders in this pairing has a problem. In my case, if I had a problem, it was to send him up ahead. And if he had a problem, the idea was I would stay and make sure that his problem got fixed and then continue to pace him. So that would be my huge piece of advice is know what you're going to do. Be prepared for that ad lib.
It sounds like you two are great at sort of doing, making up on the spot the right thing to do, and you were able to work together through that. But what I really like is that you did have a common stated objective. Really, you can't have a riding together be something where both of you are about the same strength and you're going to just try to stay together. You wind up with a situation kind of like CJ and Jaxon here, where they're both strong. One of them gets ahead and that's it. Their plan of riding together disappeared within the first 5 minutes of the race. Now, Lisa and I, we rode together one time, and that's the only time I've ever done this. And this was with the very clearly stated objective that we were going to try to defend her single speed women's champion record and set a new record. And my whole job for that day was to ride in support of that. And we were going to stay together no matter what. And you kind of need to settle those rules of engagement, right? What if one of you is not going to hit the target? What if one of you is going to, has a bad day and has to bail out? Does the other one continue on? Do you just stop and both of you work on the mechanical together, or do you continue on? You kind of need to settle those things, because when you are racing, you're dumb. And so before the race, talk through the possible scenarios, the good ones and the bad ones, and whether it is okay for the faster person or the slower person to go on if the other person just is having a bad day. Now, the stronger person should be ready to do extra work. And that was kind of my job when I rode with Lisa, right? I did an outsized amount of pulling for that race. It was my job to punch a hole in the wind to the degree that even helps a single speed. If you are both the same strength and you're going about the same speed, you'll wind up being slower than either one of you would have been if you were just racing by yourself, right, Hadi? I mean, you go because one of you is going to be feeling bad at one part of the day, one of you is going to be feeling bad at the other part of the day, and you can wind up being, essentially slower than either one of you would have been on your own. Finally, I would say be used to working with each other. Like you were describing, Hadi, with your friend, like Lisa and I were. If you're good at working together, you can improvise as necessary, and also you can get through the tough times, read each other's visual cues, and you can be clear and honest with each other. Hey, look, I'm going to throw up. Hey, I got to slow down. Hey, look, you can't slow down. We have a sub 12 we got to finish, and I know you hate me right now, but I don't care. You're going to love me in 2 hours when we cross the finish line, right? It is a race where there are a lot of emotional ups and downs. You got to be okay with working together. If you know each other, you can do that. If you don't know each other, it's a little bit harder to do. So a lot to do, but really it comes down to having good, clear communication and a really good relationship.
Yeah. It's harder than it sounds or looks on paper.
It is.
But it's fun, too. Fun acting as a team out there. So have fun. At least have fun with it. All right, let's wrap this episode. Fatty and I are on social media. Should you want to find us that way. On Instagram, it is at Michael Houghton and at Eldon Nelson for Fatty. Of course, we are both on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page. Long name to mean we're on social media and Facebook once in a while. And if you want to have a conversation with us, join our Slack channel. That's a great way to find us. You'll find a link to it over at leadville.fm/Slack.
Yep. And if you like this show, please go wherever you listen. Give us a good rating. Give us a review. To see all the ways you can find us, go to leadville.fm. Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening. We're going to see you sooner than it seems at the starting line.